Hey everybody, welcome back into another episode of WSAZ Sports Plus. I am Joseph Payton, and I know for the last month, if you go back and you rewatch some of our episodes or scroll on the podcast feed, we've talked a lot about baseball state champions and softball state champions in Ohio and West Virginia. Trust me, we did not forget about the Ripley Vikings. I was there, saw them win both of their state tournament games at Go-Mart Ballpark. So with that being said, I am so excited to have this guest on today. We've got Ripley head baseball coach Shane Casto. He's joining us via Zoom. Coach, appreciate you joining me. It looks like from Ripley, right? This is the first Zoom interview we've done up here in this studio. How are things going there in Ripley following this state title?
It's been great. Community's been awesome for us. They've been over backwards, and the 4th of July parade and different events that they've asked us to come to, and it's been very exciting. It's been a while since we've had a baseball state championship, so it's been nice to kind of get that excitement back for the community and for the kids and the program, and it's just been really nice and a lot of fun.
Yeah, talk to me about kind of the beginning of maybe seeing this group of kids. Obviously, you're a dad with a player on the team, and I'm sure you've known a lot of these kids since they were little. Was there ever a moment, whether it be at the varsity level or even back in Little League, where you thought, man, this group could be something special?
Yeah, like you said, with having a son on the team that knows these guys and has grown up with them, being able to be around and watch and help out when they were little, and now, of course, help coach them on the varsity level. I knew at an early age they had a chance to be special. It's just a matter of whether they wanted to put the time and the work in and make the sacrifices to achieve this goal that they all had in mind. So it's for them to be able to reach the pinnacle, so to speak. It's been special not only for my own kid and my own family, but for these other guys that I've watched grow up for all these years, and it's been a lot of fun.
And as a Ripley guy, I want you to kind of talk about your fan base too, because I've covered several events at the state level, whether it be basketball or baseball, where Ripley's in it, and man, there are so many people there wearing blue. That was certainly the case when you get up there in the state tournament and you play a semifinal against Winfield. That whole right side of the field was all blue and white, man. What kind of juice does that give you guys, whether you're traveling in the regular season or at the state tournament, and you have that fan base that moves with you?
It's so special. Looking back even to my days of playing in years before when I was a kid watching, anytime that there's a sports team or anything extracurricular at the high school, our community's wonderful about supporting our youth and packing the stands and, having that sea of royal blue. And, they just go above and beyond, and we're fortunate that they do that, because not many places do. And this is a small town, and everyone kind of knows everyone, and to look up in the stands and to see those people and have that backing, it's really special. And I try to tell the guys that the first time you take the field or when they announce your names, you're going to hear a roar behind you that you've never heard before. And I don't know if they believe me or not, but a couple of them, when they went to the field, they said, "Coach, you weren't kidding. This is pretty awesome." So, to look around and see all their families and their friends and, people from the community, and it's really special. You can't say, I don't know that there's a right word to describe it other than just being special.
And Coach, before we dive into, of course, those two state tournament games and finally hoisting the trophy for the first time in, more than 20 years, talk to me about the regular season. How did this team kind of develop? I mean, they were good all season long. It sounds like you guys hit the ball all season long, but what kind of growth did you see in this group that had you feeling good once you did get to Charleston?
This year was a little bit different. I guess I don't want to say we dropped down a class. We kind of stayed where we were, with them adding the 4A class. I'm a firm believer of making your schedule as tough as you possibly can for the regular season. Not everyone believes that way. That's just kind of how I'm wired, I guess. But we started off with actually a loss to Winfield, and we had a couple things happen, prior to, and neither here or there. But they kind of gave us a little hiccup to start the season, which looking back at it now, that was a good thing. And then turned right around. We played them on a Friday night, and then had Independence coming to our place, and knowing that they were in the state tournament last year at the AA level and had a lot of guys coming back, we knew that they were going to be a very good team. So we had to finish up a loss at Winfield and get home at 11 o'clock or something like that at night, and then 12 hours later we're turning around playing a state tournament team from the year before, and then to come out and 10 run those guys less than 12 hours later. So we were that was a good sign for me, like, okay, these guys have a chance here that we could do something special. Like I said before, when they were little, you see that there are things there, but then there are things that have to happen along the way. And, for us to kind of get smacked in the mouth right off the bat and then have to turn right around and see how we react to it, and then to come out and do what we did that first home game with Independence, that was very pleasing. And then it kind of just got rolling from there. We had a little hiccup at GW, had a little hiccup at Hurricane. We're able to avenge those losses later on the second time we played those guys. And it just, one thing kind of led to another, and their confidence started building. They swing the bat. You mentioned that. They were very good at the plate all year long. I think we ended up hitting like 364 as a team, something like that, which I don't get caught up in the batting averages too much, but it's when you guys have guys from top of the lineup to the bottom that are swinging the bat. I mean, our 8-hitter hit 340 and our 9-hitter hit 390. So when you have those guys at the bottom of the lineup, there's really no weak spots, and it was pleasing and made my job a lot easier. But once you kind of get rolling, the hitting is contagious. And, once one guy starts going, it's easy for the next guy and the next guy and all the way down the lineup.
I think probably especially for young kids who, haven't been around the game nearly as long as you have. Of course, you've not only played it, but you've coached it. And without that long life experience, it's easy to get caught up in the moment of losing your first game. I bet for a lot of them, if you would have said, hey, in 2 months from now, you're going to mercy rule this team in the state semifinal, some of those kids may not have believed you. But as a coach, you're probably not thinking that way, right? You're thinking, hey, this is one game. We've got like more than 30 left. Let's just get better every day. Did you have to have a conversation with those guys, or you just say, hey, let's move on to game 2?
No, not really. A little bit. We kind of took just one day at a time and didn't try to even all the way up to the state tournament. Took one day at a time and tried to treat every game as just another game. At the same time, though, respect the other team that's in the dugout, whether it's the first time or second or sometimes even third time that we've played them. And no matter what the score was from the game before, whether we get beat, whether we win, 10 run them, get 10 run, whatever. And, just take one day at a time. It's another game. We got to get 21 outs, and we got to score one more run than they do. And that's kind of how they, as the year went on, kind of how they looked at things. It's just another game. You mentioned the state tournament, and, like you said, 2 months later, no, we didn't expect to 10 run them in the state tournament, not at all. A lot of our kids and a lot of their kids have played travel ball together for years and know them very, very well. And actually one of their assistant coaches coached a lot of our guys on that travel team years ago. And, they joked around when they were younger that, one of these days we're going to play each other in the state championship game. Well, it just happened to be in the semifinal game instead. But of course then they got the John, we're going to beat you, back and forth, which is, it's good, clean fun. And, but you don't expect those things. And, our guys kind of bought in. They started getting a little confident. At times they would teeter that line of being a little cocky, and we'd have to set them back on the right side of it. But they played with a ton of confidence, and they believed that they were going to win. And they went into it respecting that other team and doing what they could do and control the things that they can control. And ultimately at the end, it worked out for us.
And baseball is such a mental game. it's certainly not a bad thing to have some confidence, whether you're on the mound or stepping into the batter's box, or you're getting ready to field a ground ball that's hit to you or something. But you kind of mentioned you got to teeter that line where it's not cockiness and arrogance, where you're a little too
Right.
big for your britches.
Right. That's exactly right. And, like I said, kids are kids, and they're going to teeter that line every now and then. Thankfully for us, it was generally in practice where we would have a little come to Jesus meeting with them, and things would get a lot better real quick and go back to normal. But, like I said, kids are kids, and they're going to, when you're winning, it's easy to teeter that line a little bit. And, thankfully for our guys, as a coach, the best thing that anybody can say is your team plays the game the right way, and they play it with respect. And we heard that a lot. And, practice, if they, act in the way, a kid may act or something, that's one thing. But when they get on the field, they play the game the right way. And that makes me more proud than anything. They're good teammates. They're good kids. And it's been a lot of fun watching them grow.
And I know you had previously been to the state tournament before, so that wasn't new territory for you, whether it be as a player, an assistant coach, but, also as a head coach. But this time around, chasing your first state championship as a head coach, you're back in Charleston, and you have your son on the mound in the semifinal. Now, I know he's a good ball player. We're not just talking about him because he's your kid. We've seen him play. But just having that extra element in there, looking back on it now, did it feel any different? Did you have a little bit of those fatherly nerves of oh man, I want to see my son and his friends and this team realize their dreams, but he's going to be a big part of it if we're going to do it?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I wanted to see how the first inning went. Having your kid out there, obviously, first off, it's special, and when they're playing well, that just, that's icing on the cake. And, but, he's played a ton of baseball over the years, a lot of big games. So I know that he had confidence in himself, but I have to try to not be dad and still be coach. And, that's tough sometimes. Not going to lie. But, I wanted to see how that first inning went. And the first time he's out there on the mound, and, obviously, or thankfully, it went well for us and went well for him. So that just kind of took care of everything that I needed for me personally inside. But, to watch your kid go out there and compete and play well on that stage, it's special. I'm not going to lie. But it's coming back, we went in 2016 when I was the head coach, and things didn't go our way. And you learn a lot from that. When you lose, or you fail at something, you can do a couple different things. You can learn from it, or you can just continue to bury yourself in the hole and make excuses and things like that. And, I've always tried to, when something didn't go my way, as a player, as a coach, as a dad, as a person, you try to learn from those mistakes. And the next time that situation comes up, you're a little better prepared. And, myself and my coaches, fortunately, they were with me in 2016 as well. And so we all learned some stuff, from 9 years ago. And so I like to think that we came back with a little better mindset, and obviously a different team, and tried to instill in these guys things that we did, or that we learned from not doing so well the first time we were there as a staff, and passed that along. And obviously they took a little bit of something from that, and we ended up coming out of there holding the trophy.
Something that I was really impressed with, aside from the fact that you did score a bunch of runs in that first one, and then I think 5 more in the final, but your defense, I felt like, played really well in those 2 games. In that first one against Winfield, it's not to take anything away from Bryson, because he pitched really, really well, getting soft contact, but they were putting the ball in play. You guys were just getting outs. And look, that's really underrated in high school baseball. If you have a defense behind you that can make the routine play, it's going to take you real far, don't you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, defense gets overlooked a lot in baseball, and everybody wants to hit, everybody wants to pitch. But if you've got a guy on the mound, I don't care who it is, And, our pitching coach, talks a lot about getting soft contact and making something happen in 3 pitches, whether that's, 3 strikes and have a seat, a pop-up ground ball. We want that something to happen to where our guys aren't out there standing. It can be a little bit, you can get daydream sometimes, and we don't want that to happen. We don't want walks. We want the ball put in play, and our guys are pretty athletic on the defensive side, no matter who's on the mound, and we're moving, this guy here, that guy there. We're pretty athletic, and when we have guys that can bounce off the mound and field a bunt quick and get a guy out, or, turn a quick double play on a ground ball. And, it makes things really, really easy on your pitcher. And that gets us back in the dugout doing what everybody likes to do. And everybody wants to hit. And we did that very well. And, so it worked out great for us. I think our team ERA this year was like 2.01, something like that. And our fielding percentage was like 950 something. So, and, I mentioned something about the batting average earlier. So when you hit 360, hold teams to 2 earned runs and field just about every ball that gets put in play, you're going to win a lot of games. And, fortunately our guys bought into all of that this year. And again, just a special year for them.
You all certainly enjoyed that semifinal win. And, at that moment in time, that was one of the biggest wins, Ripley baseball had in probably more than a decade to get back to the state championship game. How quickly do you turn that dial? Because you can't sit on that for very long. You're playing the very next day, and it's, now that one's the most important game that you've ever coached in or ever played in. How do you get those guys to not sit on that one and think about that one for too long and understand that the ultimate prize is still ahead of us?
Kind of like what I was saying before, it's another game, and they're going to put their pants on. They're going to expect to win. They're going to do what they have to do for them to take the trophy home. And, Frankfurt's a great ball club, and, returning, state tournament team with, again, a lot of guys back. And, we were lucky. We got to stick around and got into a suite and watched 4 or 5 innings of their game with Fairmont Senior, and kind of got, saw what they like to do and didn't like to do. And we were able to, Jackson was able to go out there and make some big pitches for us. And again, get that soft contact you were talking about and let our defense make plays. And it just, they couldn't wait for Saturday to show up and 5 o'clock start time to get there. But it was something that they were probably one of the most proud things that I saw them do throughout the year was when we did get up to that suite. A lot of times they're caught up in celebrating and the interviews and the hugs and the pictures and all of that stuff after the Winfield game. But we got up to that suite and everybody kind of got calmed down a little bit, got a little bit of food in them, got a few drinks in them, cooled off, got some water. But they sat down and they watched that game, and it wasn't a goof off session. And that I kind of sat in the back a little bit and, watched myself but watched our guys to see what they were doing, what they were thinking about, what they were talking about. And they were discussing the game going on a lot and figuring out, Fairmont does this or Frankfurt does that. And that made me more proud than anything that, that's all right. First step's finished. Now the big prize is tomorrow. Let's figure out what these guys are doing. Let's go do what we do and try to win this thing.
Where do you think that came from? Is that senior leadership, or is that just a group of guys who bought in a long, long time ago and then they hadn't forgotten what their ultimate goal was?
Well, we only had one senior, so
okay, just one.
Jackson, we didn't have a ton of seniors to have that leadership.
Sure.
Jackson did a good job of that. Don't get me wrong. Nothing taken away from him, but I think it's something that they bought into, and it was something that they set their sights on, and they wanted to win, and they believed that they can win, and they were going to go out there and do whatever it took, to get the job done. And they did a great job of it. Like I said, I just couldn't be more happy and proud of them. This is a little bit of a different bunch. They're very, very loose kids. A lot of times coaches want the kids that are just, focused and all, laser focused. And they were going into the, watching that after that semifinal game, but they're loose. If they're smiling and kind of laughing around and joking around a little bit, they're ready to play. And that was something we caught on to, and we made sure of that as the year went on.
You could see it, after a big strikeout to end an inning or a big hit or something, or even just a moment where there's runners in scoring position. You could hear it from your dugout, and really the fan base. I'm sure they fed off of that energy too. Yeah, your kids were not robots out there, and you got to have fun. Baseball's fun, and being that age, being that young is fun. You could tell your guys played loose, and I'm sure that goes a long way.
Absolutely. And, we try to tell it's just a game. At the end of the day, it's a game. Yeah, there's a big old trophy on the line, and you get a lot of notoriety and a lot of publicity and, postseason accolades and all that stuff. That's great. That's awesome. But at the end of the day, it's a game, and it's supposed to be fun. It's not life or death. They don't have to worry about a mortgage payment, car payment, things like that. Just go out and play and have a good time and enjoy it, soak it up, and just have a lot of fun doing it. And, they, like I said, they bought into that. And, these guys, you don't have to tell them too much to have fun, because they like to have fun. But they, like I said, they bought into it, and they played with their buddies.
How about Jackson Curry on the mound in that state title game, especially after the big, 5 runs in the bottom of the second for you all? You have to feel good at that point with his command and what he's able to do on the mound. Now it's just you got to get outs and get out of there, and then the trophy's yours.
That's exactly right. Jackson couldn't have been any better. And, I think I mentioned it in one of the post-game interviews. Jackson had a little bit of a roller coaster season for us on the mound. He's great at the plate, has great stuff. Everybody around knows that he's had great stuff, and he's had it for 4 years for us. And we were fortunate enough that he plays for us. But it was a little bit of a roller coaster, and he really needed that, and he was due for that. And I was talking with my pitching coach, and hey, well, if Jackson's on, we're going to win this thing. I said, Jackson's past due. I said, I get my guts telling me he's going to have his stuff. I didn't honestly think it was going to be as good as it was, just to be quite honest. But, I knew he was going to go out there and compete, because that's what Jackson does best. But he had his A plus stuff, and, got quick outs, quick innings, got his slider over, which I thought was huge. That was something we saw watching the semifinal game. Their game with Fairmont was, they like to hit fastballs. So, we talked to Jackson a lot about getting his slider and his curveball over. And, he kind of went with that slider most of the game, and worked well for him, and had a good feel for it. And, getting that 5-run lead, and, that just fuels his fire. And you take a kid that's got a lead, that likes to compete, that's feeling good about himself, good things are going to happen. And they certainly did for him.
So you had experienced, a championship celebration on the field twice before, and again, from different angles, once as a player, once as an assistant, now as a head coach, and I guess as a father this time too. Walk me through that moment for you, that final out in the last inning. That's all you got to do. Put one more away, and you finally get to bring another one home. How did that feel? And do you remember, even where you were, where you stood, what you did in that moment? Because I'm watching the guys pile on out there, and that's always fun. But oftentimes we're not looking to see what the coach's reaction is. What did you do? How did it feel?
They're all different. This time as a head coach, it's certainly special. It's the first time, for me personally. I stood on the steps. I'm pretty superstitious. So I was in the same stance, same steps, leaning on the same knee pretty much the entire game. And watching Jackson get that third strike, I think I just paused for just a second and kind of soaked it all in and just watched the guys and watched my coaches. For me personally, I have got to do that before as a player and as an assistant. None of my coaches have, and none of the players have. So I wanted to soak that in personally, and I wanted to see how they reacted to it. Obviously I gave high fives, we gave hugs, smiling, obviously little tear to your eye. But for a few seconds there, I wanted to see, their reaction and their emotions, I guess. It's something that I told all of them that I wanted players and coaches to experience, because it's a great feeling. It's one you can't describe. And, like I said, fortunately for me, I've gotten to do it before. That doesn't make this one any less special. But I wanted those guys to experience that, and I wanted them to feel those feelings that I have gotten to feel and over the years. And it's pretty special, and it was even better than what I expected, I guess. They were all just so happy. The boys were so happy, and all their hard work and their time and their effort and their sacrifices, it paid off for that moment, and it just really special.
Yeah. So shortly after that, we do our interviews with you and some of your guys, and then I hop in the car, which was parked behind home plate, and I'm editing some of my highlights, and I'm sending stuff back, and I believe it was the Ripley bus that drove by as you guys were headed back. Correct me if I'm wrong, if you didn't take a bus up there, you didn't take a bus back, but I'm pretty sure it was the Ripley bus, and some of the windows were down. I had my window down so I could hear it as it was kind of getting on the interstate there, and I remember thinking to myself, that sounds like a lot of fun. Whatever they're about to do, wherever they're going, whatever's ahead of them tonight and how they're going to celebrate. Man, tell the folks what the celebration is like in Ripley after a state championship and the reception that you received there. I'm sure it was out of this world.
It was huge. The bus ride home was a lot of fun. A lot of parents, a lot of fans passing us. Guys, probably shouldn't tell this, but our transportation director may see it. He's probably seen the video though on the bus. But they're hanging out the windows, and we're trying to keep them back in. But they're showing their fists out the windows and their number ones and all that stuff, and music playing, and a lot of laughs and carrying on and taking pictures. And when we get home, a lot of people get off the Fairplane exit to come to the school, but the fire department, the mayor, and a lot of the fans, they asked us to actually get off the Ripley exit and come through town. And there were people lined up along the way. We go past the fire station, which is close to the courthouse, and they've got two of their hose trucks kind of shooting a big arch of water over the road, and we're driving through it, and people cheering and taking pictures, and it was just really, really cool celebration. I personally kind of like the water thing myself. We haven't done that before, or I don't remember it anyway if we did. But it was a really cool moment, and something that they're going to remember for years, and just special seeing the smiles on the fans' faces, and seeing the joy that they got to experience from these guys too. And, it doesn't happen very often in Ripley. And I think this was our, fifth or sixth, sixth team state title in school history. So it doesn't happen often. And, for the fans that come to all the games and take their time and come support these guys. And it's just, it's just all really special.
You mentioned the celebration and seeing the smiles on everyone's faces, whether it's the players and the fans and just all these people that are taking so much pride in this accomplishment. Does that take you back to 1997 as a player? Like, did you in some ways experience it again, or experience it through the eyes of some of your players, even though now you're a coach that's been doing it for more than a decade,
Yeah, a little bit. Some people have asked, being, winning one as a player, winning one as an assistant, and now as a head coach, is one better, more special, different? They all have a lot of similarities, but they're all very different too, though. At the end of it all, it obviously it brings a ton of joy and happiness and smiles and hugs and pictures and celebrations and all of the great things that go with it, but they're all kind of different for me. But thinking back almost 30 years, there are similarities that you see. The first time winning something of that magnitude on that kind of stage, but something that's consistent with all of them is all of the fans and all the support and the town just opening their arms for you and celebrating with you. It's just again, I've used the term special a lot since we've been on here, but it's special. It's something different, and it's something that you never forget, and it's just something you'll remember forever.
And when it comes to maybe some of the younger kids in Ripley, I always think something like this, when you're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and you see the guys you look up to, the local high school team, accomplish something great. It may not guarantee that when those kids get older that they're going to win state, but at least it plants the seed of interest in those kids of like, hey, I want to do that. I want to play baseball at Ripley. I want to put on that white and blue jersey and be a part of something that's bigger than me. Man, what would be your message to some of the younger kids that maybe one day you're going to coach and they just grew up watching this group do that,
Just work. You got to work hard. You got to put time in, and you have to enjoy it. And there are days that you don't have 100%. If you've only got 85%, give 85% that day. And there's days you're going to be tired. There's going to be days that your timing's off, or you can't find the grip on your curveball, or you getting the bad hops in the infield. Whatever. You have to keep grinding, and you have to keep working. And every time there is something that doesn't go your way, move on, learn from it, and move on. And you mentioned those little guys. I have a nephew that's 11, and he's a ball player, and all of his little friends, and they were all at the game, and as well as many others. And one of the cool moments was, after both games, the guys are walking off the field, and the little guys are bringing balls up that have been, foul balls that they've gotten or one that they brought, and they're asking for autographs. And, those little guys think that the high school kids walk on water, and, for them to win a state title and the little guys to be there to see them do it and experience that joy and the happiness and all the work paying off, it does give them something to shoot for. Hey, I want to be like Jackson Curry. I want to be like Bryson Casto. I want to be like Parker Peyton Keller, Eli Landon, Brady Kyler, John. You want to be like those guys. And I'm going to be, I'm going to be better than this one. So and so was so good, I'm going to be better than him. They're going to talk about me, and that's a good thing. That brings work ethic and competition to those young guys. And but just it's just for the entire community. It's something that lifts everybody up in a positive way.
Last question for you, and maybe this is a little premature, but I do want to ask you a little bit about next season, because you return. You return pretty much everybody. Now it's you're not going to replace Jackson Curry. That's a guy that's special and only comes around every so often. But a lot of people are probably saying, well, the Ripley Vikings look like the team to beat. The funny thing about it is you don't just like spawn back at the state tournament again. You start back down at the bottom. So you have a chance to do something that's never been done before at Ripley, which is maybe go win another one back to back. But gosh, just tell me what you're excited about for next season and just getting back together with this group of guys.
Well, obviously only losing one senior. Now, granted, he was a good one. Don't get me wrong, but only losing one and having all of our guys back, with the exception of him, yes, that makes things. The expectations are a little higher, but I've already, my coaches and I, we've talked quite often still. We're all really good friends, but something we're going to have to start drilling into these guys. Last year or this past spring, the expectations were a little high because we had only lost two seniors from the 24 team, and then the classification changes and all that stuff. But so there were a little bit of expectations for this spring coming in. But now, winning one, losing one senior, having 8 starters back, the expectations are a lot higher. So something we have to do starting in the fall and the off season, the flex days, all that stuff leading up to it. We've got to go from being the hunter to the hunted now. And, getting that mindset into the guys' heads. And, again, not crossing that line and being cocky about it, staying humble, staying hungry. Like you said, we're back to the bottom. Everybody starts over again. And, obviously our goal is to win the daggone thing again. Certainly that's everyone's goal. But you got to still put that time and that work and that effort into it. It's not just going to be handed to us because we do have 8 starters coming back and we did win it last year. That all that's going to do is give everybody else some fuel for their fire and let's go knock Ripley off. And certainly so, I don't blame them. They should. But we have to learn how to harness that and use that as our motivating factor. Don't get knocked off, the top of the mountain. And it's going to be tough to do. And it's tough every year. So get that in their heads and again, just try to live one game at a time and take one day at a time and just go play.
Well, Coach, I certainly appreciate you hopping on here with me today through tech issues and all. First time we've done Zoom on here, so hopefully everything looks good, sounds good for everyone. You guys were fun to watch last year. Like I said, those 2 games in the state tournament was a lot of fun, and seeing your guys play with joy for baseball, I hope it planted that seed of interest for even some of the little guys who probably already plan on playing for you. But good luck next year. We'll be paying attention, and I'm sure we'll see you up there if all things go according to plan.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a lot of fun. Sorry about the tech issues. And
hey, it's not your fault, man.
I'm not very tech savvy. But again, really, I appreciate you having me on, and it's been a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Well, keep up the good work, Coach. We'll see you soon. All right, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. That was awesome. We were sitting here talking off camera after we, untoggled the record button about how we could just sit here and talk ball forever and ever, talk baseball and talk about these kids and talk about this team and talk about his career. You're talking 14 years as a head coach. Plenty of other stories to tell, but we certainly wanted to highlight this particular group. Hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did just having it with him. Before I let you all go and before we wrap up this episode of WSAZ Sports Plus, want to remind you where you can find us. Of course, on social media, pretty much on all platforms, and the handle is at WSAZ Sports Plus. TikTok, X, Instagram. We post clips from the show. We let you know who's going to be jumping on the show. We post pictures on there. You're going to see some highlights every so often. Of course, these interviews, we always want to make sure that you consume this program in as many places as possible, and you can share it with your family and friends. It's so easy to do on social media these days. We want to make sure that it remains easy for you, so we want to get it out in front of you in as many places as we can. You can, of course, go follow me on X and on Facebook. On X, it's at JPaytonTV. Pretty self-explanatory. Over on Facebook, just search my name with WSAZ, Joseph Payton WSAZ. Also want to remind you, and maybe some of you are listening on podcast platforms right now. If you are, thank you. We got to get the podcast going. A lot of people prefer to listen as opposed to watch, which is why we are on podcast platforms now. So on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, it's free. Just jump on there, search WSAZ Sports Plus, subscribe. It will notify you whenever we drop a new episode. So each Tuesday at 6:30, give or take, at some point during the stream, the podcast episode is going to populate there, and it's easy. Again, if you're on a long beach trip, you're driving hours on end, you're driving to a travel ball tournament, this upcoming football season, when you're talking about driving to the stadium, driving to an away game, driving to and from work, I want you to be able to listen to this program because we're going to do some things that hopefully will set you up for the games ahead and also recap the games that have already happened. So subscribe on podcast platforms. Hit us up on social media. If there are things you want me to talk about on here, people you want to hear from, let me know. I'm always open to suggestions. I want this show to be something that you all enjoy and look forward to listening to and watching each week. I know I've had a lot of fun doing it since we've started. So with that being said, this has been WSAZ Sports Plus. We'll see you next week.